what we talk about a lot on this show is the actual games within the game. Like, one thing that I think we pride ourselves on here on this show is being football guys. Like Caden Smith, producer of the show, he wouldn't tell you, but multi-time, all Sun Belt kind of safety over there. Your boy played some college football as well. So like, we appreciate the game within the game, the X's and O's. With that being said, putting our heads together, trying to prep for this show, what are the matchups that are going to determine some of these first-round college football playoff games? Because you got a lot of, like, appetizing logos and great games in themselves, but, like, there's a couple here that I think will decide the game, within the game, that is. And you look at Texas and Clemson, a lot of storyline juice there, right? We talk about Klubnik versus Ewers round 2. They played each other in high school, and, Cade Klubnik returns to Austin to play in his hometown against his hometown team. But, like, to me, this game is all about the Texas secondary, Jahdae Barron, Andrew Makuba, against these young bucks at the Clemson wide receiver core. Bryant Wesco, TJ Moore. We talked about them a lot going into the year as like, hey, could they kind of rebrand that Clemson offense, make them a little more explosive? They've done that much. Now, Antonio Williams is the leading receiver for Clemson in the slot. He's a stud. You move him around, he's going to be a guy for you, no way around it. But the guys that have the largest yards per catch numbers are who I just mentioned. Bryant Wesco, right around 17.9 yards a catch, and then TJ Moore at 15 yards a catch. Why is that important? You're not going to beat Texas running the football. I love Phil Maffa. I love Cade Klubnik's legs. The reality is Texas is allowing 3.1 yards a carry. So if you want to run your head into a brick wall that is the Texas defensive line, be my guest. Maybe you'll have some success. The fear is you wouldn't have success until like the third or fourth quarter. At that point, you're down 17-0, maybe even more, and like, hey, I don't think that's making the dent that you actually want it to make. So with that being said, I think you probably have to score with Texas. Like, I don't think this is a situation where you walk in and win a rock fight the way that Georgia did in the SEC title game. So if I'm Clemson, again, I'm looking at these wide receivers. I'm also probably looking a good amount at Garrett Riley and saying, hey, brother, we need you to get in the bag this week. we need the window dressing. We need you to dial up some shots, create some space downfield, because we have to have explosives if we want to beat Texas. Because if Texas and that that secondary locks up that Clemson wide receiving core, like I just mentioned, Jahdae Barron is going to be a Jim Thorpe Award finalist. It's going to be a very long night. It's going to be a very, very long night. You don't beat Texas, I don't believe at least, in this game if you're Clemson having drives that go 10 plays, 11 plays, 13 plays, because Texas, I believe, will have the ability to turn right around, have a 6-play scoring drive, and then it's like, okay, reset. Can we do that again? You got to have explosives to beat Texas. A lot of that will fall on the Clemson Young Bucks at wide receiver. Now, the game that I think is probably the most intriguing from a logo standpoint for all of us, the 8 and the 9 seed, got Tennessee going to Columbus, Ohio to play Ohio State. And we've talked about the vibes in this one in itself. Like, Ohio State as a fan base has got to bring the juice. That's neither here nor there. The game within the game that we're tracking, though, Ohio State and the run game, man, versus this Tennessee front that was talked about all offseason. We went and saw them in spring practice. They're like legit 12, 13 deep at the defensive line. When Will Howard got to Ohio State, I think the discussion was always, hey, can Will Howard be a difference maker for you? Now, keep in mind, that phrase difference maker does not mean like, hey, can he take over a game? It does not mean can Will Howard go for 300, 400 yards on any given Saturday and just be the eraser for you. That's not what Will Howard's asked to do. And so while the Michigan game leaves just a bitter taste in your mouth if you're an Ohio State fan, I'd also look at what you didn't do on the ground in that game. Ohio State ran for 77 yards against Michigan. Now, the Will Howard interceptions, there's no way to put lipstick on that pig, but let's be honest here. Like, Will Howard is not being asked to come in and throw for 300 against Michigan to allow you to win that football game. That's what the game required, but I think a large part of him having to try and go out and be that guy for you and not have a run game behind him, that's setting up your quarterback for failure. So going back to the point here, Tennessee's allowing 2.9 yards a carry. That's number 6 in all of college football. They have a sack rate within the top 30. So what I'm trying to get to here is if you can't run the football and you got to live in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, James Pierce is coming for you, man. Like, I promise you, like, Tim Banks is going to dial it up, and there will be a lot of pressure in Will Howard's face, and this thing could avalanche very quickly. So with that being said now, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, this is the game. This gives me the vibes a lot of when Ohio State went to Happy Valley earlier in the year, and they're doing the whole makeshift offensive line. They're still doing the makeshift offensive line. There's no way around that. But, like, I would love to see Chip Kelly get back in the bag and attack the perimeter, because I don't think this is a situation where it's funny to say this out loud, I don't think Ohio State in the trenches straight up can beat Tennessee in the trenches. How wild of a phrase or a sentence is that to say within the last 2 years, given what Tennessee's been on defense? It shows the sign of the times. So I think if you're Ohio State, you got to find ways to get the ball on the edge and get speed in space. That's where I think Ohio State can really win. A lot would fall, I think, on the perimeter blocking as well. Jeremiah Smith, everyone's seen the pictures on Twitter and on any social media platform where he just looks like he's developed in a lab. We need those biceps on the perimeter blocking, brother. All right, this is where we earn our keep if we're Jeremiah Smith when it comes to, what do they say? No block, no rock. This would be the spot to be able to block and eventually get the rock. Set yourself up for success downfield and be a difference maker for you in the run game. So the Tennessee front versus the Ohio State run game and Chip Kelly is going to be absolutely massive. I can't wait to watch that chess game. Now, speaking of chess games, you got what I've labeled the Wiltfong Bowl, because Steve Wiltfong here at On 3 is from Indiana. You got Notre Dame and Indiana in that one. That'll be phenomenal. I think that's one of the sneakier big-time matchups of the entire college football first round, or college football playoff first round. As I was trying to break this thing down, I just got to thinking, like, hey, what would be the thing for Notre Dame that could break this thing open? Because they're going to be favored in the football game, I believe. What would be the thing that could break it open for them as the higher rated seed? And I kept going back to this same idea of, well, if they can get explosive plays, the defense is phenomenal to lean on people. The run game in itself should be able to kind of grind it out and shorten the game if they end up getting that situation. So who's the home run hitter for Notre Dame? Jeremiah Love, the dude that averages 8 yards a touch. Now, Indiana has made a living off of not allowing explosive plays and allowing their offense to kind of put the pedal to the metal against, let's call a spade here, lesser competition, but still score 40 a game. Indiana's allowing 4.1 yards a play. That's top 3 in America. If Jeremiah Love is able to have a couple of explosives here or there, maybe he rips off a 40-yard touchdown run, maybe it's a little screen that goes for 50 and gets him into, scoring position. If they can have those kind of plays and then puts the pressure on Indiana against the best opponent they've played to this point in the year since Ohio State and force them to answer scores, I don't know if you want to live that way, especially in South Bend, Indiana. I don't think that's really the situation you want to find yourself in. So Jeremiah Love versus Bryant Haynes, the Indiana defensive coordinator, I think that matchup and how they try to neutralize him will dictate the game flow. Because outside of Jeremiah Love, man, who are you worried about at Notre Dame? And that sounds a little bit harsh, but I love Riley Leonard. I think he's been phenomenal in that system. I think Bo Collins is great. I love Jaden Greathouse, but there's nobody within this Notre Dame offense where I'm like, man, we got to make sure we keep a lid on that guy. It starts and ends with Jeremiah Love. So if he gets rolling, he has the explosives, and Indiana has to answer against this Notre Dame defense, I think that could kind of be a situation where things get a little bit uncomfortable if you're an Indiana fan. Last one here, we got SMU and Penn State. Another sneaky matchup. Maybe not the logos that you thought you were going to get in round one, but still a lot of fun. The SMU backfield, wildly underrated. Wildly underrated. Kevin Jennings and Brashard Smith are must-see TV. Brashard Smith, man, transferring from Miami, a Rhett Lashley guy. Don't look now, he's averaging 6 yards a carry. Talk about just electric in the open field. Also, I think he's got over 30 catches as a receiver. So they're going to utilize him. He's going to get his. And then on top of that, I mentioned Kevin Jennings. If you watched him play against Clemson, he didn't have the Lenora Sellers breaking 18 tackles kind of day, but he's making that Clemson front work back and forth across the field to try and track him down for a sack. So the bottom line here is, I think for Penn State, the matchup that I'm watching to try and attack that backfield is Abdul Carter. We've all seen the celebration where he does the 2-1s and holsters them. It's absolutely sick. There needs to be a lot of that in this game for Penn State to win. And it sounds funny because you look at the spread and you look at the logos, you're like, Penn State should roll. Should's a funny word in college football, especially in 2024. I want to see, if I'm Penn State, I want to see Abdul Carter be proactive as opposed to reactive. I'm not dialing this up if I'm Tom Allen, the DC at Penn State. I'm not dialing up a Abdul Carter spy on Kevin Jennings. Okay, we'll just see where he goes and shadow him. No, you go get after him. You set up 2nd and 15, 3rd and 17, and you put them in position to where they can't play their game. Because if they do get to play their game and they get to put the pressure on you, the disaster world here that I think exists for Penn State, and it's funny to say out loud, the disaster could be you force your offense to try and put out a performance like they did against Oregon. It was good to see, if you're a Penn State fan, to see Drew Aller and that offense account for 37 points. I don't think you want to ask to have them do it again for a second game in a row, as much as you think about Tyler Warren and Drew Aller in that backfield. So if they can, force some situations where they force those second and longs, third and longs, then the havoc starts, and then maybe Penn State gets to kind of dictate terms from there and control the game. So that's going to be a really key matchup, I think, in determining Penn State and SMU and who ends up winning. So a lot of really fun matchups across the board here. Like if you are like a Todd McShay or an NFL talent evaluator guy, like you are licking your chops at some of these round one matchups when it comes to the game within the game, as we are personally on this show also licking our chops for this one.